Gaza and the West Bank are the two areas that did not come under Israeli control after the 1947-49 war. The rest of Palestine became the State of Israel, the two exceptions, the West Bank and Gaza, the West Bank including East Jerusalem. The basic facts to know about Gaza as you contemplate what's unfolding now, the basic facts are these. Number one, Gaza is overwhelmingly a child population. The total population is about 2.1 million people. Of those 2.1 million, a little more than half are children under the age of 18. Number two, 70% of Gaza comprises refugees or descendants of refugees who are under international law also classified as refugees, the descendants. So we're talking about a overwhelmingly refugee population and a majority children population. Gaza has undergone many devastating assaults by Israel, but we'll leave the murderous assaults aside for the moment and just look at the picture as it stands now in terms of what you might call the socio-economic dimension of Gaza. So, Gaza under international law remains an occupied territory. Israel withdrew its settlements from Gaza in 2005. However, it didn't withdraw its troops. It redeployed them along the perimeter of Gaza. And nobody can go in, nobody can go out, no merchandise can go in or go out. The territorial waters, the airspace, the population registry, the electricity, the internet, everything is controlled by Israel. That being the case, Gaza, as I said, is technically under international law, still occupied by Israel. In terms of the realities in Gaza right now, I'm going to simply use the the shorthand expressions. The Human Rights Watch, in its most recent report, stated that Israel is committing crimes against humanity in Gaza. Now, when we say crimes against humanity, we have to be able to concretize that. What does it mean? So let's try to give it some flesh. In 2006, there was Palestinian parliamentary elections, January 2006. Among the observers was former US President Jimmy Carter. He declared the elections that were held across the occupied territories, not just Gaza, the West Bank, and including, my memory is, yes, East Jerusalem. And he declared the elections fair and free. Unfortunately for Israel and the United States, Hamas, the militant Palestinian organization, it won the elections. Immediately after it won the elections, the Israelis, followed by the US, followed by the EU, decide to punish the people of Gaza for electing the wrong government. And so that's when the current blockade of Gaza began. That blockade was then tightened in 2007 when the US, Israel, and some Palestinian factions acted in cahoots to try to overthrow the government in Gaza, and that coup attempt was preempted by the current government. Now, since then, there has been that blockade of Gaza, which, as I said, constitutes a crime against humanity, according to Human Rights Watch. A crime against humanity is what it sounds like. That is, it's a very high-ranking, if we can use that term, it's a very high-ranking crime under international law. What does it mean again concretely? It means, as Human Rights Watch and many others have said, it means Gaza is the largest open-air prison in the world. The people are trapped in Gaza. Let me add another dimension to that prison. Gaza is among the most densely populated places on God's earth. And the population is confined within an area of land. I was just thinking about it today. It's 25 by 7 miles. What does that mean? The length of Gaza is a little bit less than a marathon. That's literally the truth. The length of Gaza is a little bit less than a marathon. A marathon is 26.2 miles. Gaza is about 25 miles. Its width, I'll use an example because I tend to be sedentary, so my examples are very parochial. I live in Coney Island. From Coney Island to Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, from Coney Island to Grand Army Plaza Library, it's about 7 miles. So Gaza, the whole of Gaza, is less than a marathon in length and roughly the distance from Coney Island to Prospect Park or Grand Army Plaza, 7th Avenue, in Brooklyn. That's Gaza. That is Gaza. Now, I want to just add 2 more points to that. First of all, I should give you some of the socioeconomic statistics. Half the population, as I said, is children. 96% of the water in Gaza is unfit for human consumption. 80% of the people of Gaza live on international humanitarian aid. 50% of the population of Gaza is unemployed. About 70 to 75% of the young people are unemployed. That's Gaza. Gaza is, somebody described it as a toxic waste dump. Now, I want to just add one other element to the picture. In 2000, I think it's 2002, 2003, a very respected Hebrew University professor, he's no longer among the living, Baruch Kimmerling, he wrote about the then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. It was 2003. And then he gets to the question of Gaza. Now, I want you listeners, your viewers, to keep in mind what I'm about to say. I described the travails of Gaza after 2006, when Israel imposed that brutal, immoral, illegal blockade. This book was written before 2006. The author, among the most respected of Israeli sociologists, he had a chair at the Hebrew University. And he writes in the book that the Strip, meaning the Gaza Strip, has become the largest concentration camp ever to exist. It's not only the fact that he's Jewish, he's Israeli, and he invokes the analogy of the largest concentration camp the world has ever seen. He's describing a situation which was a pale comparison to what Gaza has become. A pale comparison. This was 2003. Now, the only element I have left out is beyond the steady situation in Gaza, there is the periodic massacres which Israel visits on Gaza. In 2008 to 9, it was Operation Cast Lead. 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense. 2014, Operation Protective Edge. These massive, heartless, almost science fiction-ish destructions of Gaza by the regional Goliath against a wholly defenseless civilian population, overwhelmingly children. And I would want to add, and that's where we're going to leave off, at least as a background, many people say, well, why don't the Palestinians find a Gandhi? Why don't they engage in nonviolent resistance? That used to be a kind of talking point of so-called liberal Jews in the US. Well, let's see what happened. In 2018, March 2018, the Palestinians in Gaza, attempting to break the siege of Gaza, engaged in massive, nonviolent, overwhelmingly nonviolent civil resistance. How did Israel react to that overwhelmingly nonviolent civil resistance? There was a very thorough, surprisingly thorough, I would say, UN report on the subject. It said that in the course of the Great March of Return, you might recall, because it's not yet ancient history, there were the Israeli snipers assembled along the periphery of Gaza. Who did the snipers kill? Well, according to the UN report, they targeted children, they targeted journalists, they targeted medics, they targeted disabled people. They targeted people 300 meters away from the periphery. They targeted, if you read the descriptions, and the descriptions are very vivid and detailed, They targeted people who were standing by a tree, just standing there. They targeted photographers who were just standing there, journalists and also civilian photographers. That is the reality of the state of Israel.